Okay, so the art of storytelling is one of my favorite topics. I love the art of storytelling. And to give you a little background on me, I was a broadcast journalist for 25 years. And, people would call themselves a journalist. I walked around saying I'm a storyteller. I was telling people stories, stories on, of events and people and things happening. And I became a full-time professional photographer in 2009. I'd actually started photographing weddings in 2007, but I left the world of television and entered the world full-time with photography. And what I want to talk about, because this has taken me a while to evolve into a storyteller as a still photographer. And I kind of like this quote. It kind of sums up storytelling. Storytelling is an art. It's not a process, method, or technique. It requires creativity, skill, and practice. Storytelling isn't something you can grasp in one sitting after one course. It's a trial and error process of mastery. And at one point, I'm going to share my evolution so you guys can see how I've kind of evolved as a storyteller, where I started and where I am now. And hopefully I will continue evolving through this.
Kristy,
yes.
I know you told me I could interrupt you, but
Yep.
one thing I forgot to say to everyone. So I'm interrupting you in between these two thoughts so that you can continue.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, they can put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat and I'll stop Kristy if it's inside, because Kristy and I talked about this yesterday. If it's inside the subject of what she's talking about, I'll stop her. She doesn't mind. But otherwise, I'll keep track of the questions. And at the end, if you want to just put them in the chat, I'm watching. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and please feel free to ask questions. I feel like you're engaging, with me, and want to make sure that I am sharing what I need to share with you guys, so you walk away with some new tidbits. So, the challenge of storytelling for the still photographer, our challenge, we have to inspire, entertain, educate our audience with far less to work with than a movie director or a book author. If you think about a book, it's between 240, 400 pages. They've got a lot of time to tell their story. The average length of a movie is 90 minutes. For us, we have to do it in one frame. And now hang on, I've got a little glitch here. I'm trying to see if this will let me, there we go. I had a glitch. Okay, so photography is not just about figuring out the right aperture, lens sharpness, or your camera settings. It's about, get this, more important elements such as voice, emotion, and point of view. So just like, we evolve even as photographers in that, like our lighting and posing. It takes time to learn that. The same thing with storytelling. It takes time. So there's a great recipe for great storytelling, and it's called the 6 W's. And being a broadcast journalist, we use this in journalism. The police use it in their investigations and research. And the basic ingredients of the 6 W's, who, what, when, where, how, and why. And even though there's an H in how, they still call it the 6 W's. So if we translate that into photography, who will be your subject? These are all things to think about when you're trying to tell someone or something, and I say something, it could be a flower, it could be an animal, it could be landscape, it could be commercial. Who will be your subject? What is your idea? When is the timeline? Where is the setting? How will you execute your idea? And why do you even want to tell the story? So as an example of the 6 W's, who is my subject? It's Santa Claus. What's my idea? Well, Santa is always on a schedule with deadlines. So I wanted to add a pocket watch. And I was actually in Indiana. I'm from Ohio. I was in Indiana at another photographer studio. And she does the Santa experience. So I was there photographing her with her Santa and then Santa. And I asked her a day in advance to call and ask, does he have a pocket watch? So I had already started planning, what I was going to do to tell Santa's story. And yes, I already knew he was going to be in a vintage Santa outfit. And he said he had a pocket watch. And so I had him bring it. So, he's 19th century with his vintage outfit. Where was I going to put Santa? In his study or office? So all this was thought through. How will I execute my idea? Well, I love low key lighting. So I used, low key background, low key outfit, because it gave me the option of using the normal Santa outfit with, like the white fur cuffs and the hat and stuff. But because I like, low key lighting, I picked the vintage outfit because I'm not dealing with as much white that will draw eyes down to like, his wrist. And knowing his glove was going to be, really bright, I actually toned that down quite a bit to keep the attention on his face. And then why do I want to do this? Well, I've always wanted to photograph like a classic portrait of Santa Claus for image competition, and this was my opportunity. I titled it Timeless. The pocket watch, time, and Santa is timeless. So it had like a double meaning. And to my delight, Timeless, received an imaging excellence. What I like to do is show everybody where I started and where I finished and my thought process. So I photographed him on a background, and my thought is, I don't know how well he's going to do for image competition with just that background. So I use stock images from depositphotos.com. And if you use somebody else's photography, you need to put a guide image, which you can see camera right. I'm showing the judges what is mine, the table, and Santa is mine. The background is not mine. But I felt it told more of a story if I added a stock image, and I don't have anything like this fireplace. So I used a stock image for this. I try to stay away from it as much as possible. But in this case, I needed something like that. So here's another guideline with the 6 W's. Who am I photographing? Well, my friend Lori McCoy, who was a photographer here in Ohio. What's my idea? Having her perform with the grander baby grand piano. So when I'm telling her story, what I found out, she is not only a concert pianist, but she is, I think the right way to call it is a flautist. She plays the flute. I was like, I want to tell her story. And the hard part for me was finding a stage with a grand piano on it. So spent a lot of time searching. She's from Dayton, 4 hours away. She actually drove up here, stayed the night at my house, and we went the next day to a church that had this, the grand piano to tell her story. How will I execute? Well, I brought lots of lights and reflectors. This was a monstrosity. And I knew what I was getting myself into because pianos are highly reflective. So I needed to get her lit, the piano lit properly. I do have a before and after, so you can see the before and after. But why did I do this? Well, I wanted to create a visual story. I'm getting into storytelling as a still photographer. And I entered this in competition as well. I titled it Grand Obsession. She's got, a grand piano. And for her to be a concert pianist, she has to be obsessed, with playing the piano. So she received an imaging excellence. Here's the before and after. Oh my gosh. Look at that floor. Kind of high key, mid key, trying to even it out because I knew the judges would pick all over that, a lot of reflections. So I toned that down, tried to make it as simple as I could and went black and white with that. But this was telling her story. So I have more food for thought. What is the key ingredient in making a great visual story? Bingo, impact. Impact is at the top of the list of the 12 elements of a merit image. And through my journey with photographic competition, I have learned that if I can get great impact, my images tend to do better. Notice this is Danica Barreau. She is a pet photographer in Ohio. And we're Facebook friends, but I see her on Facebook and she's always making the coolest facial expressions. She's like hysterical. So I called her up one day wanting to tell her story. And I said, what are all your hobbies and what do you like to do? And she's got a ton. Well, I love the idea that her father is a chef and she is a gourmet cook, big time gourmet cook. It runs in the family. So I wanted to create a chef image for a print competition, but I also was telling her story, and she wore her father's chef outfit. So she loved this so much. I titled it Slice and Dice, got an imaging excellence, that she made a print for herself. It's hanging in her kitchen, and made a print for her father. You know, what father doesn't love their daughter, you know, doing something that he loves, something they have in common. And she's wearing his uniform, his chef uniform. So, you know, I'm telling her story. And Judy Reinford, I've told Judy for many years, I want to be her when I grow up. I love her work. And I know she's one of your members. She's the one that got me to do this tonight. But impact this is big. Impact is all about emotion. And to me, great storytelling is all about emotion. And Judy, you know, let me use a couple of her images for this program. And what she's doing now with her impact is creating emotion. It's sadness. Her title, We Will Miss You. You know, if there's somebody looking at this, the viewer, whether it's a judge or a viewer, you know, and sees this, a lot of people probably can relate. If they're parents, they're watching their child go off to college or moving to another state or a boarding school, and there's sadness, you know, as this child is leaving them. That's impact and that's emotion. Now you're going to learn about a little bit more about me and my sense of humor. I am like, my personality is like a 6 or 7-year-old boy. I like potty stuff. I think it's hysterical, like little boys. But I wanted to create something with impact. This is my sense of humor. And this was my first attempt at allowing myself to express my humor in print competition. So, I mean, you don't ever see Santa Claus sitting on a toilet, right? So, but I think the title gives it impact, his facial expression. That's not coal in your stocking. And I entered this image in ASP's Images of Distinction competition. And when it came up, I heard a judge say, "This disturbs me." That's emotion. And another judge responded, "Yes, but it has impact." So it's almost like, you know, the other judge understood this is all about impact. And it disturbed one judge, made others laugh. My goal, I like to be the class clown, is bring humor into what I do for photographic competitions. So I do a lot of humorous kind of images now. I do series, but I do humor, and it's part of my storytelling and my personality coming out my images. Now, I reached out to some photographers across the country. My specialty is people, but I know other people do landscape and flowers and animals. So we have a little variety in here for those of you who do landscape and non-people images. So impact, when we talk about emotion, is all about the wow factor. It's seeing into the soul of a place and making a discovery. It's seeing into the soul of a dwelling and capturing its ambiance. The wow factor, seeing into the soul of an animal and capturing its essence. Seeing into the soul of a flower and discovering its personality. And I like to tell the story. This is an image by Peggy Steinberg, an Ohio photographer who specializes in flowers. And she told me one time she does with flowers what I do with people. And I never thought about this. And it's such a cool story. And it deals with storytelling, that she will sit with a flower. She sits with it and tries to feel its essence. She's trying to see into the soul of the flower. She spends time with it before she sets it up in her studio or with natural lighting or outdoors. She spends time with it to kind of discover, what story does this flower have? What story is it telling? And I never thought of that with the flower. And I just thought that was so awesome. And it ties right in with storytelling. The impact, the wow factor, seeing into the soul of a human and feeling empathy. And with the title, The Heart Never Forgets. I mean, the maker of this image, Talita Springer from Texas, look at the eyes of this little girl, just looking up, and you're seeing into her soul. And the title, makes it kind of sad. The heart never forgets that this girl's had some trauma or sadness into her life. And now you've got impact, you've got emotion with what could be considered a fairly simple headshot. She gave it impact. It's all about finding something that engages your viewer emotionally and draws them into your artistic expression. Tony Harriman, who's a judge, PPA judge, also a very good friend of mine, I asked her if I could have this image because it ties in really nicely with storytelling and the wow factor and emotion. She titled this image Release. She's given me permission to tell this story. If you can see from this dark tree, there's a ivory colored christening gown, and then the dark birds flying off and then turning into a white dove flying off into the heavens. Tony experienced a miscarriage, and she really struggled with the pain and the grief. And she does a lot of her artwork through her pain. And whereas I think my coping mechanism is through humor. But a viewer looking at this sees Release, they see the christening gown. She's left it up to the viewer's imagination, which is great for storytelling and drawing your viewer in and becoming engaged by looking at the christening gown, thinking, I wonder if a child passed away, and you've got the darkness into the light, and it's a release that Tony was able to finally release her pain, through this image. And I just think it's a great example of impact and emotion and that wow factor. Now we're going to segue into visual storytelling versus just taking a picture. And these are my images. So a picture without a story is just that. It's a superficial picture. Without a story, the photography has no depth, no personal meaning, no emotion. So these are all client images. It was a corporate headshot, camera left of the woman in the red, family portraits of the two in the middle, and a high school senior. But if you look at these images, they don't tell the story. And so they're kind of superficial. And where I like to take now, kind of evolving into storytelling, I try to get to know my clients. I interview them. There's a form that they can fill out. And I try to come up with stories, and I offer them opportunities to take it to the next level with storytelling. It's a lot more work. I charge more for that. If somebody wants an image like this, I'm fine doing it. If they want to do storytelling, which I love, we can go to that next level as well. And I have a lot of people love the storytelling images. One more of Judy's. This is one of my favorite of hers because, man, does it have impact. And an image with a story is the catalyst in triggering a chain reaction of emotions, making it memorable, iconic, and impactful. I view this image as memorable, iconic, and impactful. It's like, wow. Title penetrating. She's telling this bird's story. Look at that look. And this is where I really want to be Judy someday. I want to be able to do stuff like this because of the impact and the wow factor. But what a great story, with her title. This is an image from Ella Carlson. And I asked Ella if I could use this when she entered it in competition. And it's when everybody was in lockdown during the pandemic. And she asked 6 judges. I'm in the middle. I was so thrilled she included me in this. She asked us to do certain facial expressions to photograph ourselves in our studios or just a cell phone, and come up with this idea. And the judges thought this was brilliant and talked about this forever. She's like a master of storytelling. Storytelling is about making us excited, laugh, cry, or feel empathy for someone else. Well, look at all these different expressions. and everybody's eliciting different emotions in this, and it's giving each person a different personality. So these are all judges judging remotely, during the pandemic, and now this is what we do. We judge remote. But I love this as part of the storytelling. Visual storytelling versus just taking a picture. This is Britt, the bodybuilder. He was one of my coworkers at the TV station that I worked with. He was an engineer. He's since retired, engineer, editor, and one of my dearest friends. And we went to a Channel 8 reunion, and he was showing me images on his cell phone of him doing competitive bodybuilding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to photograph you for print competition. And he said, okay. And I had never photographed a bodybuilder. So I actually went and researched lighting. And so as I'm setting up my lighting, and I'm using this as an example, I had Britt just stand there. And I'm moving my lights around, trying to get my lights right where I want it. But while I'm doing this, I do what Peggy Steinberg does with flowers. I'm already connecting with him, like his vibes and his essence. I'm picking up on that, and I'm just getting a feel for him as well before I start posing him. I asked him, I need you to do some posing for me. And I'm still just kind of picking up on his personality. In this situation, Britt is a very quiet, shy person, the kindest person on the planet. But as a bodybuilder, I'm just trying to get to his essence. So he's posing for me. Here's another pose. I'm watching his facial expressions. And I thought, I need to get impact from him. So I had him sit, and I said, is there some kind of pose you can do? The reason I sat him is what I researched, the best lighting is to bring my lights as high as I can. And I'm aiming them down so I get shadows underneath his muscles to accentuate his muscles. And I only have so much ceiling height in my studio. So I had him sit, and he said, yeah, I can put my hands together and flex my muscles. So I take this, I'm still kind of picking up on his vibes and the look he's giving me. And I'm thinking, this has no impact. There's no emotion. It's kind of lame. There's no real story. So I said to Britt, can you growl for me? And he looked at me strange, and I said, I just need you to growl. So he went, and it was kind of a lame growl. Remember, he's quiet and he's shy. This is the look I got from him. And I'm like, nope, there's still not enough emotion or impact. So I said to him, and I showed him, I said, Britt, I need you to growl like this. So I see your neck veins popping. I need you to growl. So he growled for me. Yes, I got it. Bam. There's the image that I entered in competition. I titled it Pumped Up and Pissed Off. We have emotion. When this image came up at PPA's district competition, a judge said, this scares me. And I knew right then and there, I got him. I knew it was going to go imaging excellence the moment he expressed emotion. And that's impact right there. So yes, at the time we had the loan collection. So he loaned, now we call it imaging excellence. I mean, this is emotion. And I had a feeling this image would do well because I had emotion and I had impact. To what I was doing for Britt, though, he was there to model for me. I wanted to give him some images. By the way, he hated this image. This is not Britt. He was playing the role of model actor for me. But I wanted him to walk away with some images. So I had him stand, and I said, do some, poses for me. And we landed on this one. And I wasn't going to enter this in competition because I felt like it didn't have a lot of impact. But I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if I could get this to merit. So I decided to enter it. And I decided that maybe I could get it beyond a merit through the title. So now through the title, I'm telling his story. And I love alliteration when I can do it. Well, I knew I had to bring in the fact that he's a great grandfather. That gives us impact right there. How many great grandfathers look like this? you know, and great grandpa's got grit. And sure enough, it went imaging excellence, because through the title, I was able to give him a story, and the title gave it impact. So when we talk about titles, are kind of like music. In music, a tone is an element of sound. It includes the highness, lowness, and the quality of the sound. In photography, titles are an element of storytelling. They add dimension, meaning, and enrichment to an image. So I went to Martha's Vineyard with a bunch of photographers, and we were photographing cows. And I was obsessed with this cow. And it took me 15 minutes to get the darn thing to look at me. I was making chicken sounds, slapping my arms. You know, it had wanted nothing to do with me. And I sat down, I knew the angle I wanted. I wanted to be kind of like in your face. I was trying to do this for competition. Cows are not my specialty, but finally it looked at me. I got my shot. Again, through the title, I wanted to bring humor into it. So it was because of the look it's giving me. I'm up close in its face. Milk me, I dare you. And during one of the competitions, one of the jury chairmen said, as he was laughing, "This makes me laugh." I knew right there it had emotion and impact. I didn't think it would go beyond merit if I was even lucky. But because the jury chairman said, "This makes me laugh," just because of that statement, I went on to IPC with this image. And to my delight and surprise, received an imaging excellence. So I knew I had emotion, and I created a story. The cows are all nice, right, and docile. I kind of made this a, ooh, in your face, I dare you to milk me, you're in trouble. You know, so I gave it a different type of story through the title, and already thinking out what I wanted to do with this cow. Oath of Vengeance. This is a photographer, Miles Andanov, and he came to my studio, and I was creating an image of him totally different than this for competition. I love photographing photographers, by the way, and telling their stories. And I'm going to get to that later as part of my storytelling. But he said to me at one point, I was shooting full length, and he said, no pun intended, right? He's got a gun. I was shooting full length. But he goes, "Can we do something close up?" And he just brought the gun up to his face. And I went, that's cool. It's something different. But coming up with the title, I really struggled with it because most people don't put a gun over their eyeball. So I came up with Oath of Vengeance, and it gave it impact. It gave it emotion. And again, delighted that it went imaging excellence. But titles can really help, you know, nudge your image into a storytelling element. And I felt that's what this title did. Danica, the
Kristy,
one. Yes.
can you go back to that one? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm enjoying the image. First of all, I think there's more to it than just impact. I think you have to talk about composition and, you know, as the leading lines, things like that. And
Yes.
and you didn't break the line of the hat with the gun. I think that those are all the things that judges look for. So just to add to that, thank you.
Yeah. And I see, you might see different leading lines, but you know, like his camera right arm with the diagonal leads me up. You're
Yep,
continue through his collar right to his face.
yeah. So
You know, then his other arm is leading to his face as well. I
Yeah.
will tell you, and I knew this was going to happen, being a judge. And this is something I pick on as a judge, but I was breaking my rules. You do not show the back of the hand, right? That's one of my rules in posing. But in this case, I had to break it. And I knew I was breaking the rule because this is the way I wanted the gun to go. And the only way to do that and have him hold the gun properly is seeing the back of the hand. And sure enough, a couple judges, you know, talked about that.
Yeah, but it's not the lightest part of the image, which helps, which is
Yeah.
nice.
I mean, all things that we have to think about, but
Yeah.
he was great. Miles is great in front of the camera. He loves cam, you know, there's some people that are hams, right? And look at the expression he gave me. You know, if I didn't have him doing this, I might not have gone imaging excellence. So, you know, he contributed, you know, to me being able to tell a story as well. So thank you for your point. That was a great point about the leading lines. Danica, the chef from Ohio that I had photographed, storytelling through the title, Last of the Dinosaurs. She's bringing sadness that, are these animals going to go extinct? So many dinosaurs went extinct. A mother with a baby. It's the sadness, there's emotion, and there's impact that she created through this title. Because she could have said, baby following mom, a daily stroll in the park. She could have come up with something, but she came up with a title that set up the story she wanted her viewers to feel and gave it impact. Another of Peggy's, Peggy's the one that does the flowers, obviously landscapes it well. The Season's End gives this emotion. Being in Ohio, you guys probably go through this in New Jersey, unlike like our Florida, counterparts where it's sunny there all year round. For me, I love the summer, spring, summer, and fall. I dread winter. It's cold, you're stuck inside. And in the fall, Season's End, I start kind of getting in a different mood where it's like, oh man, summer's over. So she played off of that with her title to give this emotion and impact. It's the Season's End, knowing that the viewer, those of us that live in the North, are going to get it and we're going to feel it's the end of the season, and it's kind of sad. So great storytelling through her title. Erica Lane Harvey is from South Dakota. She's an award-winning wildlife photographer, and she graciously loaned me her images for this program. When we're still talking about titles, this is important, and as a judge, I see this all the time. The makers of images, people, photographers, state the obvious. If it's a headshot, they'll say Sally, Maria. There's no story. We can see that we've got two bears at a beach. And she realized this because the image was doing okay, but not great. It's just another day at the beach. She's sort of stating the obvious. They're at the beach. We get that. So here's what she did. She flipped it. Our brains in the Western culture read left to right. So it's great to have the negative space leading into the bears. She added another baby bear that she had in another image. The baby bear, the third one, camera right, was farther away from mom. So she just composited it in there, but now she gave it a story. Nothing like mom's homemade clam chowder. And look at her. She won the Grand Imaging Award for that category, the wildlife category. Going from this, it was doing somewhat okay, not great, to this. And she added more impact and storytelling. And it took her, to the Grand Gia winner. Another one of her images. Titles, you do not want to confuse the viewer. Erica was confusing the judges. She titled this Trunkloads of Fun, but what the judges are saying is, why would a girl be in Africa, with an umbrella and a raincoat? They didn't get it. And it was the background that was confusing them. Her story is, you're in Africa. And she realized that the judges didn't get it. So she took the background out and added balloons and changed her title to help lead the judges into the story she was telling, pure imagination. This is the little girl's imagination, hanging out with the balloons, the elephants and her umbrella and getting rained on. And she got an imaging excellence. So things to think about. We're going to go into my evolution, because my evolution is similar to probably everybody else's. We start not knowing really how to do storytelling, but over time and practice, you start getting it. The definition of evolution, the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. Here we go again. Don't state the obvious. This is one of my first images it is the first image I ever entered. But not knowing any better, starting out, I titled it Bald and Beautiful. Well, we know she's bald. We know she's beautiful. And one of my mentors, called me up. He saw when I entered our state competition, and he basically said, "You're stating the obvious. You're not telling her story." And he said to me, "What is her story?" And I replied instantly, "She's a survivor." And he goes, "There's your title." The title gave this image a story and added impact, and she went alone. So I learned a lot about titles through this, my experience with this image. This was my first attempt at storytelling. I had inherited this 1950s fur coat, and it sat in a closet for like 10 years. And I pulled it out and I said, I'm going to create a character with this coat. So Darby, a friend of mine, came to model in it. And I was so proud of myself. I spent 2 hours lighting her to get a shot like this. And I was so proud. And I sent it to 2 of my mentors, and both of them said, your lighting is good, but there's no impact. There is no story. And I'm like, really? And they went, it's not going to do well. So while I was photographing her 2 hours, after about the first hour, Darby said to me, this is so boring. I don't ever want to do this again. Well, now I have to call and say, I need you back. And she said, fine, but get it done in an hour. So I had to come up with a story. She came the next day, and I played off of the movie Titanic. So this is what I created with her. And the negative space, a sense of loneliness creeping into an older woman, mature woman, in this 1950s coat. And I'll tell you her story in a second. Why I thought of the Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Jack Dawson, was sitting with Rose and showing her his drawings. And there was a woman in there, I think he called her Madame Bugeaud when he was in France. And she was in a moth-eaten coat. And she would go back to this bar every night, waiting for her long-lost lover. And she was doing this her whole life. She just couldn't get over the fact that this man wasn't coming back. So this is kind of what I was telling with this coat. This was my story for this coat. So the title is Still Waiting for Mr. Right. And I was delighted. It was my first real attempt at storytelling, that I got an imaging excellence with her. Now I'm going to go back to the original. When Darby said, this is the most, this is the most boring thing, I don't ever want to do this again, I said, oh, just kind of shake around, make some faces, let's get the juices flowing. And she made this face, and it's an awful image of her. Didn't think anything of it until I took an advanced print competition class with Christine Walsh-Newton, and we had to bring 3 images. And I was still so new to print competition, I didn't have anything. Now I've got like 20 images ready to go. But back then I didn't have anything. So, but we had to bring 3 images. So I grabbed this one, didn't think anything of it, took it to the class, and it came up in front of her, and Christine screamed and almost fell over backwards out of her chair. And she went, you have to enter this. And I'm sitting there going, what? It's awful. And she goes, oh my gosh, it's got so much impact. So I thought, okay. And I called Darby and got her permission. I want to make sure she was okay, because it's not a flattering image of her. This was another impact lesson for me. So, we've got her making this face. I'm not a fan of this. Her husband hates it, but I entered it. I titled it Monster-in-Law, and I got an imaging excellence. This is when I really started learning about impact, emotion, and storytelling. The judges laughed, and I got the title from that Jane Fonda movie, Monster-in-Law. Can you imagine this is your mother-in-law and she shows up at your doorstep looking all crazy, for Thanksgiving or something? So it resonated, and, the judges laughed, and I had impact. So I'm going to quickly talk about my evolution with Zoe. Zoe comes back. She's my muse every year. The one left, camera left, is how I started with her. Superficial image. I thought I was doing storytelling because I put a hat on her. The next year, wear your ballet costume. It merited. The next year, I tried to take it up another level, thinking I've gotten her to merit every year, but I can't get her to loan. And then this image of her camera right is an image that I just entered last year. So you can see my progression as a storyteller has evolved over the years. She, by the way, barely squeaked by with the merit. It was a 79, one judge fought for it. Today, she would not merit, because I think the bar has been raised. But back then she just squeaked by. And by the way, because it was superficial, I struggled with the title. The best I could do was come up with The Wrangler's Daughter. And her bright eyes, merit. It's so superficial, I couldn't even come up with a better title. I didn't have a story to tell. She got a merit. Determined to Dance got a merit. So I'm like, okay, here's the 6 W's of storytelling. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. I thought, what can I do to get Zoe to imaging excellence? And Zoe's got green eyes. So I decided to create an image to accent her green eyes, hence the green wig, the feather boa, and this headdress that I kind of glued together and made. And my goal was to get her to imaging excellence. So here's the progress with this. And I had a learning experience with this. Initially, the title was Green Goddess. But there was a green color. I figured out, like, oh my gosh, she's got a green color cast to her face. So I'm trying to work it out, camera right. I'm trying to, get her face a little bit redder and not so green. And I segued into Nature's Child. I'm still kind of struggling with the title. She scored like an 89 at her state competition. But then I had an oops moment. While I was trying to get the green color cast off her face, I don't know what I did on Photoshop. I hit something and she color converted. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I love the movie Avatar, and I for a while called her Avatar Girl. But I thought, that's too weird. I'm never going to enter that. I'm not going to enter it. The judges are going to think this is too weird. But a photographer who saw both of these images said, you got to enter your happy accident. And I went, no, this thing won't even merit. And she said, Kristy, it's different and it has more impact than your Nature's Child. And then I thought, I have nothing to lose. I'll enter it. Well, guess what? She was a Grand Imaging Award finalist. She got a 96. It's the highest I've ever gone. I titled it Lavender Blues. It was a big learning thing for me, about impact in storytelling and doing something maybe that the viewer or the judges, don't see too often. This year, I was working on my artist degree. So I created Queen of Crows with Zoe. So you guys can see that it's getting more complicated, more detailed, as my journey with her continues. Client images versus print comp images. I'm watching the time. I got about 5 minutes. I'm going to go through this quickly, unless you guys don't mind me going over a little bit. But client image.
We do not mind you going over.
Okay, I won't try to rush them. We've got Michael, high school senior portrait. And I photographed him in the studio with his snowboard, but I was picking up his vibes and his essence. And I actually called and asked them, his mom, could you have him back? I want to do something. And I explained photographic competition to him. So he came back and modeled for me. And I wanted the diagonal. So, I had him lean. I wanted him to look bored. The judges love the title. I used to ski, but I got bored, B-O-A-R-D. And it was my first trophy I ever got in Ohio for the most outstanding portrait in the state. So, we learn as we go through this competition journey too, that I will call if a client is willing and they perform really well in front of the camera. I will call and say, you want to come back and model. Who doesn't want to model? And I tell everybody, if I can get you in the loan book, I'll buy it for you as a thank you gift. He merited at IPC, but I made that part of a senior package as well. And his parents loved it. They got a big, wall hanging from it. This man, I photographed him, kind of a superficial image. The best title I could come up with is Ready to Ride. He is a retired Army colonel, and he's got a Civil War colonel outfit. So I photographed him in this, and it hit me, when I talk about picking up on people's vibes and essence and personality, while I was photographing him for client work, it came to me. The image on the right just came to me, even the title. And I said, would you be willing to come back tomorrow? We'll have to round up some props. I want to create a story with your outfit. He goes, absolutely. And which one do you think he likes better? The one on the right. I'm thinking impact. One on the left doesn't have much impact, not a lot of story. The one on the right, I wanted to create sadness. Civil War, he's writing his last letter before he goes off into battle the next day and gets killed. And I think it scored an 87, merited, and ended up, I think, in the showcase book. But it didn't matter to me. I was just excited that I'm evolving as a storyteller and trying to do more with my images. Isaiah and his turtle, cute client image. At one point, Isaiah has autism. And when the turtle pooped, he freaked out. We had plastic on the ground because mom said the turtle poops a lot. And by the way, this is a delightful young man. He wants to be a biologist in the Galapagos Islands. He wants to study the turtles in Galapagos Islands. I was originally photographing him with his dog, and when he told me the story, he told me he had a turtle. I said, go get your turtle. And he goes, I have a turtle bow tie too. And I said, put it on. I'm telling his story. So it changed from him with his dog. We got that. That's what mom wanted, to this. But when the turtle pooped, he made this expression and wanted to back away. And I went, don't move. Isaiah, it's okay. He pooped on the plastic. Give me that expression you just gave me, that you're not happy he pooped. And he did this. And I entered it in our state. And this image helped me get Ohio Photographer of the Year because it's got impact. And the judges were gaga, especially one in particular. Just loved the story, but I really wanted a dog. And that's not his real story, but I thought that was an appropriate storytelling title, why he's looking unhappy. And he's stuck with a turtle versus a dog. Kenise, client image. We just threw some makeup on her. That necklace I had gotten when I was in South Africa. We put that on. Props that I have in the studio. Threw that robe on her and some gloves and created Druid Princess with her. I never really went on with it, but I think it's a good example of, just adding a story you can throw props and some makeup, on somebody to tell a story. This man is a professional sports photographer. He photographs the Cleveland Indians, the Browns, the basketball team. And so you've got your client image. It doesn't tell a story, but look at the one, impact. And by the way, I'm going to talk about this real quick at the end. I photographed him. He was part of an album that I entered. He is, and why I do photographers, my album was all about photographers and telling their stories. So the one on the right, is part of the, the storytelling impact. And of course I did this for him on the left, but he loved the one on the right. So he got a wall print as well. Here's Judy. I was at her studio taking a couple days of her classes, and she'd asked me to do, a business headshot for her. And we could only fit 4 of the 6 dogs in there because, she's got a lot of dogs. So she loves this image, use it for the business. But I said, while you're here, I'm doing this album on photographers. Can we create a story? And she went, sure. So, we have her laughing because she only can hold so many of her dogs, and the 2 are trying to get up. It's a fun, there is emotion, more impact, with the story. And that was my attempt at telling her story as Pommy Mommy. This photographer is a root beer entrepreneur. He has invented fruit flavored root beer. So this is a client image. But I asked him if we could change it out for me to be in my album. And we came up with this competition image on the right. I had him yelling, yay. And he came up with the idea of letting the root beer dribble down in front of him. And by the time we were done, shot after shot, his whole shirt was wet. But the one on the right is the one he's got big framed in the entrance of his factory. So everybody sees that one, not the one on the left. Everybody loves their stories better than a superficial image. Here's Danica, client image versus one of my favorite images, food fight. And I entered this in competition as well. And it did really well. And I love the food fight because it's funny. People laugh. I realized partway into this journey that you almost have to become a movie director, because I've only had 2 professional movie actors come into my studio. This man from Chicago was one of them, stage actor. He knows how to act, but most people don't. And a lot of people feel, as we all know, feel self-conscious in front of the camera. I'm a stranger, photographing them. And I have learned with storytelling, I have to direct them as I would as a movie director. And I joke that I now have movie director on my resume, because I get involved with people. I tell them, if I'm creating a story for print competition, I need you to step out of yourself. You're not being yourself. You're an actor portraying a character. So they don't feel self-conscious. But I said, whatever I have you do, I will do along with you, so they don't feel self-conscious doing it by themselves. I learned this with one of my first storytelling images. This is my husband, who does not smoke, by the way. I was telling the story of this typewriter. I was in an antique store. I'm a former journalist, so when I saw this typewriter, it just brought up images of my journalism days. I had to take Journalism 101, which is the history of journalism. And I stood there looking at this typewriter thinking, this typewriter has a story and I'm going to tell it. So I created a 1940s journalist. My poor husband, who doesn't smoke, half the shots, he's got tears rolling down his eyes because, the smoke bothered his eyes, or his eyes were shut closed. But he was getting frustrated. He does not have acting ability. And at one point, he was getting very frustrated with me. I was trying to do like he's working under deadline. And he turned to me and kind of barked at me. And he goes, I can't do this. I'm not an actor. And I didn't miss a beat. I said, yes, you can do this. You get back to that typewriter. And I yelled at him and I kept it going. And I said, you are under deadline. You have 5 minutes to get that story done. If you don't get it done, you're fired. You're fired. Crinkle that brow. Crinkle that brow. He crinkled it. I got the shot and we were done. And I learned at that moment, I have to be a movie director. I just set the stage for him getting stressed out. And now if I do that with people, I forewarn them ahead of time. I'm going to make you stressed out. If I bark at you, I'm being a movie director. I'm not yelling at you. I'm getting your character or you into character. Don't take offense to it. So I do forewarn people. And that's what I did with this man. He loves cars. He worked at General Motors for 40 years. He's a photographer. He now photographs car races around the country for national magazines. So we went to a commercial car garage to have cars behind him. And we made him, because he's crazy about cars, the crazy car fanatic. I was a movie director with him. Sometimes to get them into character, I actually have them yell out. Like I created a scene for him. And I said, Joe, you're crazy. The insane asylum people are there. They want to cart you off, but you won't go. Now they're calling the police to help, haul you off. And you're yelling, help me. And I said, you got to yell it. And I was yelling it with him. So he didn't feel self-conscious. And we're yelling, help me. And I've learned too that certain words get your mouth to do, to move in certain ways and help me. And I told him to bug his eyes out as he was doing it. Now I'm seeing his teeth. Help me, help me. By the way, we were so loud yelling this that neighbors heard us, came running over to see if they needed to call an ambulance or police. Oh my gosh, I was mortified. But Joe and I laughed about it afterward. Because we got him so into character that the neighbors, fortunately, they didn't call the police before. They came to see if somebody was in distress. So this is one of my mentors. I'm a photographer today, thanks to him and all the help he has given me. He is a die-hard Steelers fan. So of course we had him bring all his Steelers props, but to give it a little bit more storytelling, had the, the popcorn flying versus just sitting. And we rigged it with wire, so it propped up. And then later I had my husband just throw popcorn down and I composited that in. But talk about emotion and storytelling. Another photographer, he's a Mr. Fix-It kind of guy, loves gadgets and fixing things and taking things apart. There again, you got impact and emotion with that facial expression. You're not supposed to set things on fire when you're soldering. So this is him reacting to setting, what he's working on kind of on fire. So we got shock, we got impact, we have emotion. You saw, the root beer guy. This was me having him yell, yay, as the movie director. And I'm yelling yay with him to get this facial expression, to get enthusiasm. Danica, determination. I was setting the scene that turkey's not happy and it's coming at you with a knife. It did not have a knife. Oh, you're going to see the image. It did not have a knife. I did have fish wire strung through its wings, and I nailed it to the rafters above to get it, and you see it's on a, those grill turkey chicken baster things. I cloned it out, but, Danica had to visualize that it has a knife. So I was like, you got a chicken and it's coming at you with a knife and you're defending yourself, your skillet, your sword, and, you're about to do, serious battle with this thing, to get that look from her. And to me, it's priceless. But Danica, who's not a professional actor, is a great actress. So I love photographing her. How do I come up with some of my stories? Getting to know my subjects' interests and personalities. The man on the left he's a, what would you call him, a dapper dresser. He loves to dress nice. I ordered the top hat and the cane. I had that chair. He had the suit, with the tux with the tails. So I added some props to help his story. Susan Gertz, pet photographer in Ohio, crochet queen, loves to crochet, loves her animals. So we incorporated 2 of her dogs in there. Title, Somebody's in Trouble. Impact, storytelling, emotion. Ella Carlson, probably many of you know her. When I talk about getting to know my subject's interest, I had the honor, I actually photographed Ella's presidential portrait when she became president of ASP, American Society of Photographers. While she was here, I said, I want to photograph you for competition. And she was also part of my ASP fellowship that I submitted this past year. So I needed to create a character of her. I wanted to tell her story. Well, this is Ella's work. She won the top Grand Imaging Award, first place, for this album of aliens she created. So guess what we created? An alien. I even hired a movie makeup artist, a professional movie makeup artist, to do her makeup. Googled, just kind of got this whole ensemble together. That's a handmade painted space gun. We actually have a spaceship in the town that I live in. So I went and photographed the spaceship. And then that's a Canada scene that I did, some star stuff in Canada. So it's all my work, but I made it artist because I was working on my artist degree and I was thrilled that it merited. But this is me getting, knowing Ella and creating her story as a storyteller. Lisa Pertilli actually came to my studio from Minnesota to take 2 days of my PPA sponsored photography workshops. She's a vet. And before she came, I called her up. I had this epiphany telling her story. I said, do you mind modeling? She came a day early. Do you mind modeling? I want to enter you in print comp. She does not like being in front of the camera, but I talked her into it. And I actually went to a veterinary clinic and photographed their surgical room. The dog was in this image, with her. We had her dog model. I got a hamster, photographed the hamster and put it in her pocket and created Dr. Doolittle. And this is on her website. This is telling her story and her personality, that she's crazy for animals. And it's more of a storytelling image. So this is on her website versus the older one that she ditched out of. Telling a story based on your subjects, personalities, and interests. I come up with stories from costumes, as you guys know. Still waiting for Mr. Wright, that vintage outfit. So all of these came about. I saw this dress and knew that this redhead was coming to me, and we put her in it. To me, it was perfect for her with her copper hair. Costumes can put on your models or your clients. Props, the coat, the typewriter. This was just the magnifying glass that made me think of Sherlock Holmes, and I ordered the costume from London and it was shipped here, and had a friend of mine model for that. In this case, this is my husband. I just entered Ebenezer this past year. Did not expect imaging excellence. But during the pandemic, I normally have very short hair. This is pandemic hair, my pigtails. My husband and I did not get our hair cut until the vaccines came out. So I think we quarantined for 1.5 to 2 years, 1.5 at least. Hair grew long. And one night in the middle of the night, I'm at my computer working. He got up and I heard him coming out of the bedroom, and I'm like, "You okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm just really hot. I'm going to play with the thermostat." But I was already walking in this direction, and I looked at him, and he had the worst case of pillow hair I've ever seen, with this, frizzed up hair. And I took one look at him, and I knew what he was. I knew his character. I went to him, "You're Ebenezer Scrooge." And he has a tux that we put on him, but I actually Googled and found a vintage bow tie from the 1800s. And created this. And then I took a background, thinking more storytelling versus just a regular background. It's a building that I photographed in Europe, and dropped that in and darkened it and created this Ebenezer character. And then as soon as we were done, he's like, "Can I cut my hair now?" And I said, "Yep, go for it." So other things, I was at the Kennedy Space Center taking tourist shots, and I was looking through one day and saw that spacesuit and went, "Oh, I need to do an astronaut picture." So for my artist category, I came up with, again, my sense of humor, trying to be funny, Close Encounters. But there again, look what I did. We have a shocked look. And this was stock photo. All of this was stock. We have a shocked look. There's impact. There's emotion. We have an astronaut who thinks he's going to a planet that's uninhabited. And all of a sudden, these little cute aliens are running and jumping all over him. I'm creating emotion, shock, storytelling. We're almost done, by the way, guys. And I'm showing these in case any of you do, artist, trying to cover all the bases. I photographed this sea lion in the Galapagos, and I was determined to get him into competition, print competition, but it was an underwater point and shoot. I knew it by itself it wasn't going to merit, so I created the scene. I had to paint him, a little bit, created this underwater pool party. For telling what can I do with him to tell a story? The one on the left by itself, I would have called belly up, going belly up, but it doesn't tell that much of a story. It's more superficial, creating a story. And we're almost done. The balancing act. I see this image of this elephant, and this thought came to me about him being on a tightrope, and I put the kangaroo as my image. The rope is my image. I added some stock photos of the chicken and the little bird to give it some humor. I added the flags, like it's directing, the elephant, how to get across the tightrope. And I added the little animals down at the bottom, like they're hanging on for dear life, trying to make it more humorous. And then this is the last image of my stuff. This storytelling came about all because of an album and my fellowship portfolio. This is my ASP fellowship print presentation. Every person in this is a photographer, and I told all of their stories in one frame. And this is where I really evolved. This started off as an album for print competition, and it did well in competition, but it ended up becoming, there's a fellowship offered through the American Society of Photographers. So this was my, portfolio. And this is how I evolved into doing the Art of Storytelling program. This triggered this thought of I should do a storytelling program. So with that, I have 2 last slides. I thought a nice way to end this by saying it is our job to narrate a story in a single frame, let the image speak, give it a voice. Just like a good book or film that gets you emotionally invested in its characters, photographers can do the same with their images. Don't shoot what it looks like, shoot what it feels like. Another quote, photography is a story I fail to put into words. And my favorite, the greatest art in the world is the art of storytelling.